Hello, Garland Nixon here. And Sunday night, we're going to have a little bit of a talk. A lot of people online are very suspicious and are, in fact, convinced that Israel was behind the Charlie Kirk assassination. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and let's talk about some interesting, a little bit of news going on here and there, and give you my 3 cents worth on it. Let's start here, the Charlie Kirk assassination. So I think this is interesting and consequential. The truth is, I have to say, as a again, former investigator, I'll say this: nothing is definitive. We don't know anything. We know that there is a suspect in custody. We know that. Let me just put it like this: as soon as it happened, as soon as this happened, the first thing that I said was, partially in jest, I said, "Well, I don't know who it was, but I know it's not going to be the trans activist from Berkeley." And people may remember watching, my discussions after the Charlie Kirk assassination. I said, "Well, I don't know who it is, but it's not going to be some trans activist from Berkeley," because I felt like that's the play now. It's always got to be a trans activist of some type, right? A blue-haired hippie trans activist. There we go. That's the mass shooter. That's the assassin, whatever the case may be. So I'm like, yeah, we're not going to buy that, right? And I felt like a lot of people online who, I guess maybe we've all gone down the road of conspiracy theory, if that's the right word. In that conspiracy theory, that phrase was initially, that euphemism, as it were, conspiracy theorist, was initially invented by the CIA as a pejorative term, as an insulting term, to attack people who didn't believe the official story of the JFK assassination, which of course turned out to be a complete fraud, and the CIA was all involved in that one. And there were people now who suspected Israel was involved. And I wouldn't be shocked or surprised if they were. But at any rate, let's talk about this Charlie Kirk thing. So they've got a guy in custody who fits the profile. Trans activist. He's apparently staying with a trans partner person or something, and all of them just fits the exact profile that I guessed would have been the profile for the shooter. Basically, what I was saying, if you get right down to it, I was saying, in the event that it is some kind of an intelligence operation and they actually took Charlie Kirk out, and they're putting up some kind of a patsy, that patsy will, of course, obviously be a trans activist. That's what I was saying when I said that. I'm not saying that now. I'm saying when I made the statement, I don't know who it is, but it ain't going to be some trans activist from Berkeley. I meant if it's a intel operation, they'll pump out a trans activist for sure. So that was my feeling is at the time. So when I saw the whole as soon as I saw, yes, there are bullet casings and there were things about trans stuff on there, I'm like, oh, who wouldn't have saw that coming, right? So let's talk about this. Again, it could possibly be that it's just a trans activist from Utah. I don't know. But what's interesting is that people online in hordes don't believe it. Don't believe it at all. I mean, huge numbers of people, gigantic numbers of people do not believe it. That they're basically everywhere I see, like my online friends, or people that I talk to about the show, the other, YouTubers that I talk to, and rumblers, if that's a word, and rock finners that I talk to, like people are like pretty much convinced that Israel did it. Now, if we start looking at the circumstantial evidence, there is clearly a mountain of circumstantial evidence that does point to Israel. Now, there's a guy in custody who who they say did it. Okay, there hasn't been an investigation yet. We don't know. I mean, a full, a trial, whatever. Which even a trial, people get convicted of things that they didn't do. So I don't need not a trial. A trial is not even the final word. But let's look at some of the things. You've got this a Gray Zone article, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with, where there's like some insider, you know who it is, and a guy saying, Charlie Kirk was scared of Israel. Charlie Kirk was offered big money by Israel, right? Like millions of dollars by Israel. And you know what that was? That was hush money, buddy. That was 30 pieces of silver. That was, I don't want your blood money. You might as well take it. We think that you should. But people might remember that from what was that? An old like back in the 70s, Jesus Christ Superstar or something. But at any rate, yeah, that was blood money. That was, look, Charlie, you're starting to have notions here, brother. You're starting to say, perhaps we should question Israel. You're starting to say, well, we questioned COVID and we questioned Ukraine. Perhaps we should question Israel. Perhaps we shouldn't. That was what they were saying. There's two ways to do it, plato o plomo, right? What does that mean? That's a term that was invented by, to the best of knowledge, the former drug leader of the Medellin cartel, Pablo Escobar. And what it meant was the silver or the lead. In other words, when we offer you the silver, a bribe, if you don't take the bribe, we're going to shoot you. And there are those who look at the millions of dollars that were offered, the significant sum of money. I've heard numbers like 14 million, but you never know. But Charlie Kirk was starting to ask questions, and apparently, he was the Godfather himself called and said, "Hey, Charlie, you a lot of talking these days. You busting my chops here, Charlie. I tell you what, here's that $14 million here, Charlie. Yeah, take the money, Charlie." You know what, Charlie? They're all saying now you should have took the money. But he didn't take the money. That's what the Israelis are saying. If you ask Israel, hey, what do you think about Charlie? He should have took the money. Because that's what people feel. Intuitively, people feel like they offered him money. He didn't take the money. We know what the mafia does when you don't take the money. The other aside. Now, imagine this. For instance, I don't know. There we go. We've got Justice on there, right? There we go. Look at this. Justice, Narco Rubio, Secretary of Cartel Money Laundering. I love that. But imagine it. If old Justice called Garland, people are like, hey, how's things going with Garland? Well, old Justice called him and offered him some money and said, we think you should take the money. Really? And what else happened then? Well, Garland said he was scared of Justice, that he was afraid, concerned for his safety. Really? And then what happened? Garland's car blew up. Who are you going to suspect? So, I mean, it is not unreasonable. It is not irrational, and it is not illogical to suspect. It's not, I'm not saying that I know that Israel did it or didn't do it. It is not irrational to suspect that if a guy says, I'm scared of this guy, and then he gets off, that the first door you should knock on is the guy who he was scared of. Now, let me add this. And then, to put topping on the cake, if people weren't suspicious enough, okay, we understand that Turning Point USA was like a place where they sheepdog design, young Zionists. That's what it was. It had been a big sheepdog organization. Sheepdog young Republicans into Zionism. You must support the Zionists for life. Sheepdog them in, right? Man, if Charlie Kirk starts asking questions, not real good for the sheep. Not the sheepdogging business starts to look kind of weak, right? So what happens? He asks too many questions. He loses his job. And who did they replace him with? Ben Shapiro. Now you know what's going to happen now. Now that Charlie Kirk, God rest his soul, is gone, has lost the job, Ben Shapiro will now make Turning Point. He will now create it in his likeness. Turning Point USA. Ben Shapiro's running it. It's going to be Zionist Point USA. Turning Point is going to be nothing but a super duper pro Zionist sheepdog indoctrination for young right wingers. Come support Israel. But what happened to Charlie Kirk? He didn't support Israel. You don't want that to happen to you, do you? You might want to support Israel. I mean, think about this. What we're talking about is the political assassination, right? Kirk was close with the Israelis. The Godfather came out and said, I didn't kill Charlie Kirk. This guy was busting my chops. Nothing. The Godfather came out and gave us an implausible denial. Now, as I said, I don't know that Israel's involved. They got a guy. They think this is the guy, and there's a gun with the trans stuff written on it. Jumping off of buildings. I don't know what the hell's in his hand. What did he do? Take the gun apart, go in the woods, put it back together? I don't know. But I'm just saying, people are suspicious. And online, like everybody I talk to says Israel done it. They don't even get, I don't know. Do you think maybe a trans activist? Everybody I talk to says, I think Israel done it. Let's do a, let's see. Everybody in the chat. We got 468 people in the chat, right? Let me ask everybody in the chat. Who do you think done it? Just put it in the chat. I'd like to see. Who do you think done it? Who do you think is the perpetrator? Do you think it's our trans activist guy? Israel, maybe? I don't know. What do you think? Put who you think is the perpetrator. Everything I've seen. Okay. This is a political assassination. Let me add this. Has Israel been involved in any political assassinations lately? Let's see. They tried to do a political assassination in Qatar to kill the leaders of Hamas. They tried to do a political assassination in Iran to kill the leaders of Iran. Oh, by the way, when the Iranian president's helicopter went down near the border of Azerbaijan, a lot of people in the region, dare I say, most people in the region felt as though that it was the Israelis who killed them. Oh, by the way, didn't they assassinate a bunch of Iranian scientists? They've been doing nothing. What about the leader of Hezbollah? I could go on and on. All they do is political assassinations. So you've got the Israeli government that just every day, another political assassination. They brag about it. They just came on and they said, look, think about it. Just last week, there was this attempt to kill the leadership of Hezbollah. Trump comes out and says, I'm sorry, I apologize. Now, it was not a plausible denial, but whatever. Trump comes out and says, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. What do the Israelis do? They come out and say, yes, it will. Israelis say, screw this guy. We'll do whatever the hell we want. We will do political assassinations in any country we want, any time we want. Anybody who's a threat, they're dead. That's what the Israelis said. Any country they want, may just include the United States. So the bottom line is there are those who suspect that the Israelis might have been involved in the JFK assassination. I don't know, but people suspect it. So I'm just saying that things sure worked out well for Israel afterwards. I mean, Charlie Kirk was starting to ask a few questions, and now they got a guy in charge that ain't going to ask no questions. A very valuable organization for Israel. They couldn't afford to lose that organization. So I'm just saying, as far as I'm concerned, I'm highly suspicious. I have not come to a conclusion that it is a trans activist from friggin' Utah yet. And I will continue to monitor the situation. Let's just say this. Israel has the motive we clearly articulated, the gray zone clearly articulated the motive for the murder. They have the ability clearly to commit the murder because they do political assassinations on a daily basis. Now, whether they had the desire to do it, which is the third pillar of the three things that you need to commit a crime, I don't know that they had the desire or not, but they sure had the ability. They had the motive. They had everything except whether they had the desire, I don't know. But I'm just saying, what I find interesting is the level of trust for Israel is exactly zero. Look, if people think and believe that Israel is committing assassinations inside the United States, that means that people do not see Israel as an ally. Now, I wonder what's going to happen for Turning Point USA. Is Turning Point USA going to still, are all of these young Republicans and conservatives still going to be there? Let me see. Let's look at their website, shall we? Turning Point USA. Let's look at their website, see what we got. Charlie's Vision, America's Future. So let's take a peep at Turning Point USA and see where we are. There we go. Building a legacy. Okay, they got all that stuff. Now, that's weird. You can't get to anything else but that. Movements, events, students. So I'm trying to click all over it. And the only thing, get involved, the only thing you can click on is this Charlie Kirk thing. Interesting. The whole rest of the site is pretty much down. Okay, so let's look at the rest of it. Let's just look at Turning Point USA and see what we got. Fight for Charlie, State Farm, Cardinals, tribute to Charlie Kirk. You can't get on their site. Turning Point USA. The only thing you can get on is that. So we'll see. I guess maybe when maybe after when Ben Shapiro they get all of this done, I guess they will get going again. But I think it will be interesting to see the direction it goes. But I think the direction will be, you see, somebody said the Wayback Machine. No, I want to see what it looks like going forward. I want to see what Ben Shapiro's I want to see what Ben Shapiro's hand in this thing looks like. I suspect it's going to be let's just say this, there ain't going to be no questioning of Israel. But I think the bottom line is whatever happens here, I imagine this trans activist guy will get convicted. I will imagine he'll get the death penalty and they'll snuff him out as quickly as they possible, like Oswald and others, the sooner they're dead. Maybe some guy named, some guy named Jack Ruby's great grandson, when they're transporting this kid from one place to the other, Jack Ruby's great grandson will go up and pump a couple, sneak in and pump a couple rounds in him, so we won't have to hear from him. But at any rate, we're all suspicious. That's all I'm saying. We're all suspicious. We shall see. Now, let's move on to the next thing. And we're suspicious. There is a tremendous amount of evidence that points to Israel as to having the motive to do it. A lot of people online believe that. A lot of people all over the place believe it. We shall see where this goes. Next, let's talk about Dronegate. So a couple of freaking unarmed drones fly into Poland, so we're told. It certainly appears like maybe this might have been a bit of a false flagathon, right? We're supposed to believe now that the Russians attacked the Poles with drones that didn't have any charges. They were like surveillance or dummy drones or whatever, and that was an attack on Poland. That's what we're supposed to believe. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So, but then the Charlie Kirk thing happens and it just dies in the news. The Dronegate just dies. Um, Additionally, the thing that really hurt them was their plan was to do this and go to Trump and say, there you go, Trump. Look at that. They've attacked us with a bunch of small drones that don't have explosive charges, but we've got to go. You got to come in. We got to, nuclear war is the only answer here. We've got to annihilate all of humankind. Come on, Russia, China, Russia, U.S. Go get it, Trump. Fire at them. We need a nuclear war as soon as possible. And apparently Trump was like, yawn. Apparently they asked Trump, hey, what do you think? And Trump said something like, it could have been an accident. In other words, here's the thing. I think he understands it was a false flag. I think the Trump people are like, really, come on, you guys got to do a little better. If you're going to do a false flag, I mean, talk to the CIA, consult with the CIA. They're really good with false flags. I got to say, the Poles and the Ukrainians' false flag operations are weak, man, if that's the best they can do. Their status as false flaggers has gone down to 0. Come on. You needed to blow something up. You needed drones with explosive charges on them. But dummy drones, that's the best you can do. You're dummies. And you couldn't even fake Trump out with those. So, and then Charlie Kirk, that, tragedy happened. A young man was killed. And so the whole Dronegate has flopped. It's just completely died. It's going nowhere. They gave it a shot. They threw it out there. And the bottom line was when Trump said, could have been a accident or something. In other words, here's what Trump was saying. Hey, Trump, what do you think about drone gates? That's what I think about Dronegate. Leave me alone already. Dronegate's dead. Long live Dronegate. I think that the EU will probably try other false flags, but based on Dronegate, if that's their idea of a false flag, they ain't real good at it. So, I mean, I'm not going to be overly worried that they're going to come up with some brilliant false flag. What next? You know what I mean? Well, it was a joke. This was pathetic. So much for that. Dronegate is dead. Let's talk about these EU sanctions. Look, Trump asked the EU to do sanctions that he knew they couldn't do. That's all it was. Hey, I need you to do something that you can't do, which means he knew they wouldn't do them. Anybody around him, what's the old saying about lawyers? A lawyer will never ask a question. Not that Trump's not a lawyer, but a lawyer will never ask a question if he doesn't know the answer. When Trump said, I'll do this if you'll do all of that, what he was really saying was, you can't do it. What Trump was really saying is, you can't do it. And I can use that as an excuse. Now, what Trump will use it as an excuse for, there are people saying Trump will walk away. Now he wants to walk away. Trump wanted to walk away a long time ago. But in my opinion, he wanted to walk away. But in my opinion, all the machine really wants to do is they would like to say, if the U.S. can walk away and let Europe take over the war on Russia, the only problem is the EU does not have any way to do that. So that's a joke. So that's it. But so that's about it, guys. I got to run. I got somebody knocking at the door, unfortunately. So I will talk to you